thank you everybody for coming this evening. It's really, really wonderful to see you for our summer staycation event with 10 authors. So this is really like maximum fun and craziness this evening. We will try and go through and have a plan that so each author gets roughly about 7 minutes, and they will have 1 minute to pitch you their novel, 2 minutes for a reading, and then 3 minutes for quick fire questions from either myself or my colleague Nathan. We do have a lovely lady from Hillingdon, Emma, who will be monitoring the chat box and just making sure all your questions get answered. There will be 20 minutes at the end, especially for your questions. Also, this evening is being recorded, so just to warn you about that, and it will be uploaded to the Hillingdon Library's Facebook page after this. So if you don't want to be on the recording, feel free to switch your camera off, but we would love to see your face and love you to see and say hello to all the authors. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else? Have I covered everything, Nathan? Is that it?
I think so. Do we want to tell everyone about the competition?
So there is a competition, and SJ has 15 amazing packages from My Book Moment. We might also have a few books available for you to win as well, and they are all going to be given out to the 15 or so best questions. And we're not quite sure how we're going to judge that, but we'll do it at the end, don't worry. So the more questions you ask, the more chance there is to win something. So get your questions in the chat box. That would be absolutely wonderful. Yeah, and I guess we should kick off. We've got a few more people coming in, so just let them get in. My internet connection went just like completely off and back on again. So can everyone hear me okay? Yes, okay, wonderful, excellent. Great. All right. Without further ado then, we will start with our very first author, the lovely Penny Parks. Penny, where are you? Give us a big... Yeah, there's Penny.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, so I'll just do a quick intro, Penny, if that's okay.
That's
She's best-selling author of the Out of Practice series. Home is her 5th novel and first standalone, a compelling, rich and evocative story. Home is Anna's journey to discovering that it isn't where you settle down that matters, but the people you have around you when you do. So Penny, tell us a bit about Home.
So the new novel Home, it actually just began with an idea that wouldn't leave me alone, which is kind of timely really with the years we've had. It's just the fact that the word home means different things to different people. So is it where we live or who we live with, or you know, how we present it to the world, whether that's an accurate reflection or not. And Home is essentially the story of Anna Wilson, who is a professional house sitter, and she spends her life taking care of other people's homes and their pets and sometimes their neighbours. She's living vicariously, basically, all over the world. But in a way, she's caught in this sort of nomadic cycle, this carousel of other people's lives, because she's looking for answers for herself. She had a really turbulent childhood, sort of bouncing around the foster care system. So in a way, she's looking for a template, not just for the kind of home she wants, but the kind of life she wants, and somewhere where she doesn't have to dilute herself to fit. And so while she doesn't really know what home looks like, she's absolutely convinced she will recognize it when she sees it. And the book really, the whole book is a love letter to friendship, because over the years, by default, really, Anna's friends have become her family of choice. And throughout the story, it's the question of whether those friends, that family of choice, might be enough for her to step back from this fear of making the wrong choice that's holding her back, really, in finding her own place to call home. It's really hard to do in 1 minute, guys.
I think you did an amazing job. It was amazing. Well done, Penny. Well done.
First one. There we go.
Excellent. Yes. And your 2-minute reading.
And my 2-minute reading. Do you know, I'm going to go old school. I'm going to go right from the very beginning, because then I don't have to worry about spoilers while I read. So we begin chapter 1, Oxford 2019. Anna turned the large cumbersome key in the lock and held her breath. This was the moment of truth every time, that first impression of her new home, however temporary. Somehow, whether by intuition or simply years of experience, Anna could always tell whether her new placement was in a happy home or merely a glamorous shell of style over substance. She dropped her single efficient overnight bag at her feet and glanced around the echoing hallway of Gravesend Manor, even its name giving her a prescient shiver. Certainly nobody could accuse this rambling Victorian manor house of feeling cosy, and she had a fresh understanding of why its owners might prefer to holiday in the Caribbean sun rather than face another month of drizzle in the Oxfordshire countryside. Her mobile buzzed in her pocket, and she glanced at the screen before answering, relieved to have at least 2 bars of signal. "I'm already here," she said simply. "And is it just as Adam's family as you thought from the photos?" laughed Emily, clearly shuffling papers as she spoke. Anna looked around, wandering through from room to room, taking in the tapestries and the polished mahogany furniture, which were clearly oh so expensive, but lent nothing to the welcome or comfort of the place. "It'll be fine," Anna said reassuringly, to herself as much as Emily. After all, she didn't have to live here, just keep the home fires burning until Captain and Mrs. Fraser came home. "I mean, I've walked through 3 different sitting rooms and I've yet to find a warm one or a comfy sofa, but it's only for a month." She paused. "It'll be fine." Emily laughed, knowing her favourite house-sitter's maxim all too well. They might rarely meet in person, but Anna's commitment and flexibility meant that she was easily the most reliable, the most sought-after house-sitter on Home Network's books. "Do you want me to get that embroidered on a pillow for you?" "It's easy for you to say," Anna said, sitting behind your desk with a cappuccino, sending me out into the middle of nowhere without so much as a handover from the owners. Anna walked into the kitchen in search of the promised note that would explain her duties during her stay at Gravesend Manor. That in itself was a little unusual. Normally owners like to meet their house sitter in person, to hand over the keys, explain the foibles of the wonky shower or the kitchen window that wouldn't close, or the tendency of their whippet or Siamese or house rabbit to pine.
That sounds brilliant. I cannot wait to read that. That's fantastic. Can we just see? Have you got the book there? Because hold it up so we can see it.
There's the camera. Can you see?
Beautiful.
I have to tell you, look, you've got little doors on the front and little doors on the spine. I just love the idea that each door leads to a different life, you know?
It's very cool.
Very lucky.
First question, what inspired you to leave the practice series and do something completely different?
Do you know, I think it was just one of those things where this idea got wedged in my head like an earworm and it wouldn't leave me alone. And every time I sat down to write, because I did actually sit down to write a different book, and it just wouldn't leave me alone. So my lovely editor said, "Do you know what, just go with it. And even if it ends up being a short story, you can pop it in a drawer and then get back to what you're supposed to be doing." And that didn't happen. So now we have Home instead. And I have to tell you, it was just the relationship between Anna and her best friend is possibly one of the most amazing relationships I've ever written about. It really, really spoke to me. And I got sort of deeply, deeply engaged, because I think there's a lot of talk about romantic love, particularly in fiction. But really, it's this kind of enduring platonic love that can shape our whole lives. And I don't know about you, but I will often turn to a friend for an opinion on, you know, a big decision before I would sort of turn to a boyfriend or partner, because maybe they've known me longer. My best friend I've known since I was 6. So she's got the whole warts and all version and has no filter on her opinions whatsoever. So it was just the most amazing love story to write. But it just happened to be between 2 friends.
And I think that kind of is a beautiful thing. And like you say, not talked about enough, definitely.
Yeah. And what we all aspire to. And, you know, this last year, let's be honest, it hasn't been easy for anyone. So the idea of what home is and what home means has really, really changed. And I think a lot of people who maybe had a really extrovert social life have suddenly had to reevaluate how they live. And a lot of people like me, who probably are a little bit more introverted, have suddenly started going, "Oh, I'd actually like to go out." So there's, you know, this sort of balance of comfort versus, you know, how it looks to people walking in the door, or, you know, social media or whatever. But I really wanted the concept of home not to be about all these amazing houses that she goes around visiting and living in and trying on for size, if that doesn't sound too creepy. You know, there's her very first house sit. She's in a really smart Muse house in London. And she's kind of like, right, I'm going to live the life. And she goes with her notebook to this cafe and she's, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to do this. And then, you know, with each year and each placement that went by, she just sort of started finding that it was easier to drift from place to place. And I mean, I had a ball writing it because I could just call on all the most amazing places I'd been, even when we couldn't go anywhere. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much.
I'm
really aware of the time. I want to get
I know we're all
so no, that's great. I'm going to pass over to Nathan for the next author. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lara. Okay, so next up we have Eva Verde.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you doing this evening?
I'm very well. A little bit nervous, but I'm okay.
Oh, don't be nervous. Although I do have here the old Kenko jar of wonderful literary questions, which we might delve into if we have time.
Okay.
Ava's first novel, Lives Like Mine, was published last month. Kit Duval has called it a bittersweet story of longing and self-discovery. Could we, first of all, hear a little bit about Lives Like Mine?
Yes, sure. Lives Like Mine follows the story of Monica. She's approaching 40, married, happy enough, mum of 3. But for the past 14 years, she has been tolerating her in-laws and their intolerance to her ethnicity. And the problem is growing bigger and bigger, and it starts affecting the children. And this is Monica's catalyst, really, to begin rebelling, in a sense. Yes, she's sort of her children have started school. She's really drowning in all her roles, and who to sort of save her but this dad she meets at the school gate who ticks all her needy little boxes. He's a handsome, brainy doctor poet who just completely rocks her world and presses the button of explosion. It's a roller coaster tale of rage, rebellion and rediscovery. Was that a minute? Was that a minute?
Perfect. And do you have a 2-minute little segment? Because there's a little.
I'm going to follow Penny and take from the start. Yes, to avoid any spoilers. So, chapter 1: love, honour, obey, and conform. Way back in the day, on the bus stop outside my childhood church, in great Tippex capitals, were the words "Virtue is Valium." After Saturday school or Sunday mass, Mum would tick me off for reading it out as we waited for the bus home. Funny what comes back. Outside a different church, in my grown-up different life, is how you find me now. Despite all I've been, this is what I became. Mother, wife, good, grateful, so grateful. Perhaps at last a daughter she might be proud of. Perhaps not, though. All wholesome contemplation gets smothered by the fast approaching pastel linens, complete with grabby hands, like those amusement machines on seafront piers. Penny, my mother-in-law, only by law. At least you look hot, Dan says, sharing my emotions like we've learnt to share everything else. His soothing hand on my hip works. After the speeches, we're off, I promise. Dan's beautiful eyes are disarming, known to have me feeling like there's no earth and he's the centre of everything and all it means. It's unsettling, revealing too, how feebly teenage I can be, how romance very much still rules. You pair, that's proper love. Penny's kisses give way for the giggles. Love and good hair, Monica. As those grabby hands reach for my neat ballet bun, I laugh along too, with a mockney-cockney twitter that makes for the oddest of feelings. I never did take to all that frizz. Virtue is Valium. Outside this different church, in my grown-up different life, those little white words from the bus stop stick. My sadly thinning hairline meant calling time on the relaxers. I'm now transitioning, in love with the very word of the process I'm slowly adapting to. At 39, I'm at last embracing my 3C curl pattern, trying to dismantle what went before this transitioning, my conditioning, that natural hair was unruly, unsexy, primitive, comedic. My big black hair is a tiny rebellion. Yet today the rebellion shrinks. Here it's best to fit in, even if that means taming myself insipid, overlooking this early yet predictable banter, cloning the woman I am truly from, back at that bus stop. Mother, wife, good, grateful. It's a trick that's become like armoury, protecting my little brown self from this family of people, still as alien to me as the day I married into them. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I'm sure everyone else did as well. It interested me that your book is about an affair. So how did you make sure that readers were going to kind of stick with your main character, even when she was maybe not always making the right decisions? Was that a tricky balancing act?
It was tricky. I think that the way to sort of navigate that is just to be quite honest about it. You know, she isn't particularly likable. She's deeply flawed and deeply unreliable narrator, and I think she probably is a bit like Marmite, you know, and morality and things had to sort of be pushed to the side a bit. Although I have so many grey hairs from writing her, I'm not doing affairs again. Book 2 is not anything about affairs.
That's interesting. So it was kind of a tricky one to balance. And
Yes.
How about the problematic in-laws then? You touched on that a little bit. What inspired that strand of the story?
I sort of used experiences, racist experiences that happened to me in the past and my family, and sort of turned them into fiction. Really, it was quite therapeutic. I'd sort of take the seed of something or a moment or a comment or just a feeling and sort of turned it into fiction. Yes, yeah. A lot of things do start with an element of truth to them.
Definitely, all the best fiction, I think. Right, I'm delving into the Kenko jar now. I hope they might look sunny, but there are some hard-hitting questions in here. I think it's a good one.
I'm prepared.
Right, what have we got here? Okay. How did COVID impact your writing and reading life?
Right. It destroyed my concentration span. I've not been good for much apart from box sets, really. Fortunately, with the writing, I was at when we went into lockdown, I was at a point where I was editing mostly. So I didn't really have to be the most creative. It was more of a sort of head down and be practical. But yes, I've got 3 daughters and they are teenage and the house is really noisy and it was impossible to do much, to tell you the truth. Yes. But we were well, so, you know, grateful for some things.
Have you managed to settle into drafting something else now that things have settled down a bit?
A little bit, yeah. I'm starting to have new voices in my ears, and yes, it's coming. If I tried to explain it, we'd be here all night. But yes, I am having ideas.
Well, I wish we had all night, but unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to pass back to Lara now. Thank you so much, Eva.
Oh, thank you, Nathan. Thank you for having me.
That's wonderful. Loads of people in the chat are like, that's 2 books on my TBR already. So we're making a really good impression. It's wonderful. Next, we move on to Heidi Swain. Give us a wave, Heidi. Is she there? Heidi?
Heidi.
Heidi. She was there. I did see her. Maybe she's frozen. I'll do a little intro and hopefully she comes back.
Right.
So the glorious writer Heidi Swain, who is now on her 12th novel with A Taste of Home, set in Wimbridge. Heidi, you there?
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, sorry, maybe you're on mute.
No, I'm not on mute, but I tell you what, I have got written across my screen in lovely big letters, your internet connection is unstable, which is what you always want for this sort of thing. So I'm sorry if I duck in and out a bit. It's crazy.
Don't worry. It's lovely to see you.
Thanks.
And then tell us a little bit of A Taste of Home.
Okay, well, it's really nice to be here this evening, and it's really lovely to see so many familiar faces. I recognise loads of you, so that's great. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a bit about A Taste of Home this evening. And when I sat down to log on to the Zoom meeting, I realised that I had to read the blurb, because today I have turned in the proof pages for Underneath the Christmas Tree. And I am also wading my way through the first draft for the book that comes out next summer. So it was really nice to return to Wimbridge to have a look at this. So yeah, A Taste of Home is set in Wimbridge, or it starts off in Italy, in Puglia. where we get to meet Fliss Brown. She has been born and lived.
Hopefully she comes back.
Have you lost me again?
You've come back. You've come back.
Okay, right, we're doing this. Where did we get to? Okay.
Fliss Brown. Yeah.
Set in Wimbridge. Fliss Brown receives a letter from her mum at her mum's funeral to tell her that she has got family back in Wimbridge. And then Fliss makes the decision to travel back to the UK to get to know her family and find out a bit about her heritage that she had no idea until her mum died that even existed. So I'm hoping you can still hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So so Fliss travels back to Wimbridge.
Oh, someone shared their screen.
Okay.
Oh, we're back. I'm so sorry, Heidi. It's all going around.
So well, this is fabulous. Okay. So basically it's about again. Okay. It's Fliss's journey to find her family, and it was wonderful to go back to Wimbridge because a lot of people are invested in the town, and it was nice to introduce some new characters, but also to have some former stars heading back into the limelight again. So that was great. Shall I get on and do a reading?
That'd be lovely.
Shall I be really quick? Okay. I think I've jinxed it. I'm so sorry.
No,
right.
no, not at all. Not at all.
We're going to start at the beginning. So wave at me if I disappear, Lara, okay?
Okay.
The sun had long since set over the Italian horizon before the last of the mourners finally headed back to their homes, leaving behind a mountain of food and a silence in the farmhouse kitchen that neither the Rossi family nor I could bear to acknowledge. No one's eyes strayed to Mum's much-loved pattern Moroccan shawl draped over the chair next to the stove, or to her collection of thin gold and silver bangles bundled together in a box on the table amid the crockery and cutlery. Early that morning, I had thought I might wear them to her funeral, but when it came to it, I couldn't. I don't think I can do this, I had sobbed, pulling them off again when it was time to leave for the church, but I wasn't talking about wearing her jewellery. I had watched Mum's last breath leave her body, and yet somehow I still couldn't believe that she was gone. I didn't want to believe that she was gone. We might have spent more time apart than together, more hours sparring than hugging, but the thought of never seeing her again, never having another spirited crossword, wrenched my heart in two. I had tried to make myself believe that she was travelling again, off on one of her adventures, but the image of her final moments were imprinted on the inside of my eyelids, and that made the pretence impossible. You will never be ready, darling Fliss, Nonna had said, her eyes as swollen from crying as mine, as she gently took my hand and guided me out the door into the spring sunshine and then to the waiting car. Nonna's diminutive figure had been by my side all day. She had led me through the service, walked me to the graveside, and afterwards found me a seat and another plate of food back in the kitchen, which had bulged with Rossi relatives all wanting to pay their respects. She was watching me even now from the far side of the room. I got up quickly and began covering dishes and rearranging chairs, not wanting to worry her further. Fliss, said Alessandro, Nonna's son, the dear man who considered Mum his sister, even though they hadn't shared a single drop of blood. Leave that. But it needs doing, I replied, my voice every bit as hoarse as his. The food needs to be put away at least. It can wait, Alexandra kindly said. I need to give you this. What is it? I asked, turning to face him. A letter, he said, holding out a white envelope. A letter, I swallowed. For me? It's from your mother. My eyes flicked from the envelope to Alessandro's careworn face, and I bit my bottom lip to stop it trembling. She wrote me a letter, I croaked. You know your mama, he shrugged. She always liked to have the last word.
It sounds wonderful and wonderful.
I hope you got some of that.
No, all of it.
Oh, good. Good.
And your books are always kind of like a warm hug. They're always just so, wonderful and heartwarming. And there is obviously a very seasonal feel, Christmas or summer or spring. Does that already give you like just a setup a setup setting, a ready-made setting?
It kind of does a bit. I mean, yeah. And this year for Christmas, I'm taking us to the seaside, which I thought might be a little bit unusual. So yeah, and you think about the setting in relation to what's going on there at that time of year. But then, of course, it can also be a bit tricky with writing the Christmas books. There are certain things that happen in the town on certain days. And so you have to make sure that you've got that continuity throughout all of the books. So if you've got a summer festival or a Christmas tree auction and it happens at a set time, it has to happen at a set time in every book. So you have to be mindful of that.
And keep the continuity though. Does it work? Does your editor go, actually, no, you missed that?
No, I have like a timeline. And when I'm doing my planning, I print off a big calendar. And I write in there all the specific things that happen on certain days, so I know that we will have a scene set around a particular event. So I'm managing it. I'm just about there.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much, Heidi. Wonderful.
I was a bit mad, everybody. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'll pass back to Nathan. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Laura. Okay, well, next we are really, really pleased to be joined by Laura Bambrey. Hi, Laura, are you around?
I'm around. Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic. Coming through loud and clear. So Laura has made the jump from book blogger to author, which we all dream of making that move, with her first novel, The Beginner's Guide to Loneliness, which is itself about a blogger. And author Claire Frost calls it funny, warm, and brilliantly uplifting. Laura, have you got a quick précis of The Beginner's Guide to Loneliness to give us?
I'll do my best. So Tori Williamson, the main character, finds herself completely isolated. She loses her mum in a really tragic accident. It's not to say that she's close to her mum, but that is the catalyst for her finding herself completely alone. Something else happens that means all her friendship group drops off as well, so she's completely alone. She starts the blog, The Beginner's Guide to Loneliness, to help her cope with it, but she does that anonymously. And just as she's starting the blog, she becomes friends online in a grief support group with 3 people. They're the ones that convince her to take up a retreat at a wellness centre in Wales called The Farm. And so she goes off for a free 3-week break, which is completely full of mental case hippies, basically, who are going to help fix her. She's completely skeptical, but she goes along because she thinks she should write about it on her blog. That's what she's there for, and just chaos ensues, basically.
And could we hear a little extract?
Yes, glasses, afraid so. So I'm not starting at the beginning because it's all chat room stuff, which I've tried to read out and it's mad. So this is where she's just arrived. She's getting picked up by the owner of the farm to be taken back. I'm Ted, this is Frank. He pats the side of the Land Rover. Let's get you back to the ranch, he says, grabbing my case. When they'd said Land Rover on the phone, I'd pictured a lovely, shiny Chelsea Chariot, the kind of vehicle that glamorous platinum blonde mums use to drop off their kids at their very expensive private schools. This isn't one of those. There are only 2 words to describe it: rust bucket. It used to be khaki green, but it's been repaired and patched so many times that the surface looks like it has a bad case of acne scarring. There are patches of rusty red paint and blobs of white, presumably covering some botched mending. It looks as though there may be a fair bit of household gloss paint on there too. The canvas back is just as bad and appears to be mainly held together by moss and bits of gaffer tape. Your carriage, madam. To my horror, Ted yanks at the handle, throws open the door at the back of the vehicle and waves me in. Don't worry, it's not too far. I'd let you sit up front, but Dennis is in there and he won't move for man nor beast. It's fine, no problem. I force a smile. He's got to be kidding. The floor is covered with bits of straw and, well, poo. Dried poo, but still. Waving and nodding at me are 4 other people. Okay, so 3 are waving and nodding, and the 4th one has his head back and appears to be fast asleep with his mouth open. Either that or he's dead and no one's noticed the smell yet. Everyone, this is Tori. Tori, everyone. Ted smiles at me and swings my case up onto the floor. Do you need a boost? Asked Ted. Oh, right. No, thanks, I'm fine. I I can't find any convenient handholds, so I try not to pull a face as I rest them on top of the filthy floor and attempt to get a foot up. But the shoes aren't helping. I'm slipping and sliding on the rusted metal, and the heel threatens to snag at any moment. I'm really starting to struggle when a hand appears in front of me. Without looking up, I grasp it. Just as it gives me a tug, I feel Ted's palm plant firmly on my behind, and he gives me a hefty shove upwards. I practically fly into the back of the Land Rover and land straight on top of the owner of the helping hand. There's a grunt from the warm tangle of clothes and skin from underneath me. I scramble back hastily. "Hey, watch it," comes an angry growl from a skinny teenager I just managed to pin against the canvas side. "I'm so sorry," I mutter, trying to keep my head down and my sweaty, horrified face to myself. Oh, shit, shit, shit. Not the calm entrance I'd been hoping for.
Thanks, Laura. So loneliness, I guess, is something that affects people all the time, but it's maybe been on people's radar, especially during COVID times. What made you kind of want to use that theme in your work?
Well, actually, obviously, when I wrote this book, COVID hadn't even been thought of. It was bizarre the way that suddenly it was affecting everyone. I think having experienced those moments, those deep, deep, deep moments myself, you realize it's so universal, even in the heart of like the biggest family or the warmest group of friends. I think everyone's had that moment when they've sat there and felt completely alone at some point, like they have no one to turn to. So I lost my own mum. Luckily, she's not half the monster that Tories is, but I lost my own mum in 2018, and I remember just sitting there at one moment thinking, there is no one I can talk to right now. And it was just a couple of seconds, but it's a really deep-seated feeling when it happens.
And do you think your book might be able to kind of help people as we move out of the pandemic from that point of view? I
hope so. I mean, it's meant to be comedic and light. There are darker elements to it, but the way it's set out at the beginning of each chapter, I had the fun of writing kind of fake self-help snippets. I think they were the best bits to kind of come up with.
And I was also really interested in your transition, I guess, from book blogger to author. How did having book blogging on your CV kind of shape your writing? Was it kind of a helpful background? Oh, amazingly. I mean, when I was reviewing and blogging, I probably was reading, the bloggers in here all know this, you just read so many books. I was reading about 7 a week at one point. And I think having all of those narratives and those stories, it just, I don't know, you get blown away by these amazing authors, and you kind of hope to become even like the smallest hint of how amazing they are. So you push yourself for that, I guess. Yeah, in terms of like being a training ground for writing fiction, I'm sure it's like one of the best. Right, we've just about got 20 seconds. I'm delving into the jar. Okay, this one's maybe a bit cheeky. Do you have any childhood library memories you can share with us? Oh, I have the worst childhood memory from library. I've got a really, really bad memory. And I joined this bus. I was at my best friend's house, and there was a bus that went round that was a library, and I took out 5 books because I was obsessed with books. Got them home and promptly forgot they weren't mine. And Mum and Dad got the rudest letter ever. I was only about 5, I think. To be honest, that happens on a daily basis in the libraries. Maybe not the rude letter, though, thankfully. Oh, well, thanks so much for talking to us, Laura. It's lovely to be here. Thanks. Lara.
Okay, great. Our next 7 minutes goes to Anstey Harris. Anstey, delighted to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Anstey, you have a bit of a sore throat, don't you? So would you rather me ask you questions rather than do a reading?
No, I'll be fine. If I collapse into coughing, I'll stop.
Okay, all right, no worries. So hugely popular Anstey Harris, who wrote the Richard and Judy Book Club pick, The Truths and Triumphs of Grace Atherton, which I would imagine most people here have read, is talking to us about her book, Where We Belong. So yes, so tell us a bit about that.
Well, I actually wrote mine down. I'm not quite as slick as everybody else, I don't think. I found it really difficult because if I could say what it was in a minute, I probably wouldn't have written it. So, but basically, It goes like this: the pressure of parenting can be enormous, and the responsibility of being a single parent is even more claustrophobic. When Kate is made redundant and receives notice on the home she shares with her son, Leo, she thinks it might all finally crush her. She and her son will be penniless, homeless, and hopeless. Their only option is a semi-derelict apartment above her husband's family's museum in the Kent countryside, a museum he resolutely refused to visit and that Kate knows very little about, except that it's full of stuffed animals and empty of visitors. Worse still, the only company they have when they get there is the old family retainer who hates them on sight, and a teenage delinquent who thinks Leo would make a perfect best friend. So the book is asking the question, can Kate ever find a way to make this place home, and can it ever be where they belong?
Wonderful. Excellent. 1 minute.
Hang on.
And then, yeah, then you're reading.
Okay. So I actually went for kind of 2/3 of the way through. I cannot count the people outside. This is Kate speaking. They look for all the world like an angry mob come from the village to storm our castle, except that they're all smiling, they're chattering and laughing, and they're carrying buckets and mops and ladders and cloths in place of swords and maces and clubs. The line marches down the drive towards me. I can see Malcolm near the front, obviously instrumental in this tide of people. He smiles and winks. Open the door then, he says. Let's get on with it. And they walk down the drive, 2 by 2, into the house, just as the animals did before them. I stand, open-mouthed, and yet to brush my hair or my teeth as they pour through the front door and into the building. The ladies from the WI, as varied in size as the countless antelope inside the museum, just as bright-eyed, just as neat in their dun jackets, are at the front. An army of smaller animals, Cub Scouts and Girl Guides, carry buckets almost as big as them, nimble mountain goats with oversized horns balancing their way through the rocky outdoors. I see giraffes and bison, zebras and secretary birds, trying to control legions of wayward monkeys, monkeys who run backwards and forwards, squealing with excitement at being part of something so huge. A pair of colourful parrots, young and in love, walk in front of 2 old bears who have gruff, low voices and long ladders on their shoulders. They mean business. I recognise one of the parrots as Poppy from the art class, her blue hair a mascot in the sun. The people are dogs and meerkats and tortoises and cheetahs. They are butterflies and snakes. They are crocodiles and chimps and the kind of capable octopi who will use all 8 arms to make short shrift of anything. And they march 2 by 2 and 2 by 2 until there are more than 100 of them in the house. People who love the museum, people who want to help, an army of soldier ants, of worker bees, hyenas to clean up the things we don't need anymore, beavers to build and repair, bags full of tools on their backs. That's it.
Lovely, thank you. And my question to you is going to come from, I don't have a Kenko jar like Nathan, but I had an old Quality Street box full of different coloured card. So nice. Pick green, blue, pink or yellow.
I have a blue, I think, please.
A blue. Okay, let me choose a blue. Just so you know, the blue one. Okay. Sorry about this question.
Oh, no.
Do you have a uniform for when you write, e.g. something super comfy? Do you always write in
you know what, I probably do most of my writing in pajamas, because I like writing really, really early in the morning, like very first thing, and then, you know, kind of dealing with it, getting it done. So yeah, probably always something comfy anyway. And then also for the rest of my life, like, that's the great thing about Zoom, isn't it?
I know. I mean, you know, I'm wearing shorts. It's amazing.
I'm wearing shorts as well. Proper shirt and then shorts and bare feet.
We have time for one more. What colour would you like?
I'll go green, please.
Green. And what's the hardest part of writing a book? Sorry, that's so open-ended.
That is so open-ended. I think what I found as time has gone on is that the more you write, like exercising any muscle, the more you write, the better you get at it, and the more critical you are of yourself. So you write a line and then you think, nah. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago, you'd have gone, oh, that's awesome, I love that line, and you'd have left it in there. So you're constantly editing yourself more and more each time you write a new book, and I think that's the hardest thing for me.
Anstey, thank you so much. It was wonderful. Sorry we
me.
have to move on, but we'll speak to you more at the end. Okay, all right, Nathan.
Thanks, Lara. Okay, so next up, I'm really pleased to welcome Sharon Gosling. Hi, Sharon, you all right?
All right, thank you very much. Lovely to see so many people here. Thank you so much for coming along.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic to have so many people. We really appreciate you being here. So Sharon's here to tell us all about her book, which is called The House Beneath the Cliffs, and it's out next month. It's an inspiring book of second chances, according to Woman's Own. And although this is her first novel for adults, Sharon is already an established author of non-fiction, children's and young adult books. She's pretty much done everything. So Sharon, can you tell us a little bit about The House Beneath the Cliffs?
I can. I've got a proof copy here. I haven't got final copies yet, but here's a proof copy. So House Beneath the Cliffs is about Anna. My main character is called Anna, and she's a chef. She's been working in London for most of her career, and she's approaching 40. She's been with her long-term partner who's a celebrity chef ever since they both left college, and the relationship has finally fizzled out at about the same time as her father died and left her some money, and she's at that time where she's just thinking, what is she going to do with her life? You know, she's feeling quite alone. What's the next step? And she finds a tiny house for sale in a village called Crivy on the Scottish coast, on the Moray Firth. And she buys it pretty much because she can afford it, and she wants to be somewhere as far away from as possible and somewhere completely different. She thinks she's leaving behind her life as a chef and her ex-boyfriend, and she's not sure what she's going to do, but she moves to this place, and she almost immediately thinks it's a terrible mistake, that the house is basically a shack on the shore, and she has a run-in with a local immediately as soon as she moves in, and she just feels like it's a huge mistake, and she doesn't think she's going to stay, but then slowly she begins to kind of get to know some of the community, and her love for cooking is re-inspired by some of the local produce. She opens a little lunch club, and which is just a table on the shore, and slowly her life begins to change, and she begins to find herself a bit more. So it's really a story about what do you do when you reach an impasse in your life and you remove yourself to somewhere completely different, and it looks like it's not going to work. How do you survive that? So yeah, that's The House Beneath the Cliffs.
And can we hear a little snippet?
You can. I'm going to read from the beginning to avoid spoilers, as everyone else has done. The spring sky above the ocean was a bright and brilliant blue, streaked with the occasional wisp of white cloud, as if someone careless had released candy floss into the North Sea wind. Anna drove to the edge of the cliff, where the road vanished over what seemed to be a blunt edge, and then on past the sign declaring the point beyond which only the cars of residents should pass. Around her, grassy farmland tipped towards the water, until the slope became an angle that not even the cattle could abide. The road cut down and over the cliffs, sinking quickly between green-covered clefts splashed with the paint of wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Halfway down, a precipitous footpath divided itself from the tarmac, a wooden sign pointing the way on foot. The road continued on, curling back on itself in a bend so sharp that Anna wasn't sure she'd make it, even in her tiny tin can excuse for a car. Beyond it, the village of Crivy unspooled below her to her right, a string of houses clinging like colourful limpets to the wild lip of the narrow shoreline beneath the cliffs. The road opened out slightly as it reached level ground, backed by one or two wooden huts before it turned into a rocky beach that curved away from the village towards a towering promontory of grass-shrouded red rock. Before her, the North Sea stretched on into the horizon, the edge of the land crashing down to meet it in overlapping folds that reached far into the softening distance. The tide was out, The road squeezed between the cliffs and a sheer drop down onto a jagged field of wet black rocks and smaller tumbled stones. Anna pulled up and switched off her engine, staring out at the dip and swell of the blue-green expanse ahead and trying to gather her thoughts. She'd been there less than 2 minutes before a shadow slanted against her face, swiftly followed by a single sharp rap on the glass. Through it scowled an old man. Anna wound down the window. "Help, you cannot park here," he said. "It's for residents only." He turned briefly to shake his cane at the backside of another sign she'd ignored. "Tourists have to park at the top and walk." "But I am a resident," Anna told him. "B&B and holiday residents, dinner counts," he interrupted, still scowling. "Tourists park at the top." Anna decided that she was done being at a disadvantage, and so unclipped her seatbelt and pushed open the door. Once she was on her feet, she stood a head over him, yet he remained imposing. His shoulders, hunched now, were still broad and must have once been powerful. Lines traced around his eyes and mouth, deep creases weathered by a life probably lived largely outdoors. "I'm not a tourist," she said. "I'm a resident, a permanent one. I bought the Fisher Girls' luck." Anna tried for a smile and put out a hand. "It's nice to meet you, mister." He recoiled as if she was holding out something offensive, then looked her up and down with clear contempt. "You," he hissed, "you're the one." Yes, my name's Anna Campbell." He shocked her by turning away and spitting violently at the ground. "That bloody place," he said. "Old Robbie should have let the ruddy sea take it." Then he turned his back and began to hobble away, faster than she would have given him credit for. "Wait," she called after a moment. "Please, I don't want to get off the wrong foot. Can't we talk just for a minute?" He didn't stop. Anna watched his retreating back with a sense of dread. She leaned against the car, feeling suddenly defeated. She hadn't even been here 5 minutes and her worst fears had been realised. This wasn't going to be a haven. No one was going to want her here. A wave of nausea coiled up through her gut and she took a deep breath, drawing in a lungful of salt air. Overhead, the gulls screeched and wheeled, and for a moment it seemed to her that they were laughing. "Of course they are. What were you, she thought, what were you thinking? Why didn't you go abroad like Kathy suggested? You could have just rented a cottage in Spain or Italy, somewhere warm. Why here? Why buy the damn place at all? Why?"
Thanks so much, Sharon. And I noticed when I did a little bit of detective work that both you and Anna have made your homes in remote villages. So were you able to draw any details from your own experience when you wrote? Were you almost chased out when you first moved into
No, so no, the opposite. I do live in quite a remote village in northern Cumbria, actually, in the fells in northern Cumbria, and we moved here from London. And when we first moved here, we definitely didn't want to say that we were from London, just in case. But no, everyone here is lovely, and actually a lot of the characters that Anna becomes friends with in the house beneath the cliffs are based on my neighbours, who are hilarious and balmy and fun. I love them very much. So no, we were very lucky.
Okay, that's good to know. So it's kind of the dark mirror to your experience.
Yes, my fears, but not the reality, thank goodness.
And what made you make that move then from writing children's fiction, which I know you've done before, to deciding to write this one for adults?
I'm still writing children's fiction actually as well, but I think I just, as you said, I've kind of done a bit of everything. I'm one of those writers that just kind of has a scattered brain, really, and I just write whatever I feel like writing. And this idea I'd had for quite a while, and my agent kept telling me to write it. She kept going, "Please write this story. I know it's a good story. You know, people will like it. Please write it." And I didn't really believe her, actually. I wasn't sure that I could get it out. So then I got ill a couple of years ago and had surgery, and it was almost I kind of did it as I was recovering. I wrote the first draft. I was like, okay, I have to stop, you know, I can't do anything else. What can I write? And this story, I really enjoyed being in this place and living, you know, it's quite an escapist story in some ways. And I just enjoyed being able to disappear. Crivy is actually a real village. It's a real village in Scotland that I love. It's one of my favourite places in the UK. So it was nice to just disappear off up there while I was recuperating, really, and write the story. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Sharon. And The House Beneath the Cliffs is out next month. Lara.
Okay, right, I'm ready. So next spotlight goes to Holly Hepburn. Holly, where are you?
I'm here.
Hey! Lovely to have you with us. So Holly is a prolific novelist, having written books for children, teen, adults. So again, just a bit of an all-rounder, a bit like Sharon. And her Star and Sixpence series is one of my favorites. Like it's my comfort book. Like I just go to and just read it again when I feel sad. It's just lovely.
Oh, that is the nicest thing for an author to hear, by the way.
I'm so pleased. Thank you for writing it. She has a new series out today. So tell us a bit about that.
It is my publication day for part 2 of this series. And for anyone who doesn't know, my books come out in 4 parts in ebooks, first of all, and then we squish them all together to make a paperback, which comes out around about January usually. So today's book is part 2 of The Little Shop of Hidden Treasures. And if you've read any of my books, you will know that they're generally about communities, and this one is no exception. So we join Hope Henderson as she is returning to her childhood home of York from London. And she's coming back because she's a young widow. She lost her husband, Rob, a couple of years before the story starts, and she's been trying to put her life back together without much success. And she has given in to her family's demands that she comes back to York. But she's a little bit adrift at the start of the book, so she doesn't have anything keeping her in York other than her family. And they've been telling her that she needs to get a job. So she is looking around for something. She doesn't want to do what she did before. She wants to try something new. She doesn't really need to work because she's quite financially stable thanks to Rob sorting all that stuff out for her before he died. So she takes a part-time job at a shop that she loved when she was a child. She was always walking past a shop called the Ever After Emporium, which is on High Petergate in York, just under the shadow of York Minster. And she walks past there at the very start of the book, and she sees an advert in the window looking for part-time staff, and the story unfolds from there.
Awesome, thank you, that's brilliant. And would you read us the little excerpt, please?
I will, yes. I have to read it on my phone because it's only out in ebook, and it's just too difficult to have it printed off in front of me. So hopefully this is all going to work. So what you need to know before I start reading, I'm not reading from the very beginning. I'm reading from the moment when Hope has gone into the Ever After Emporium and met the owner, Mr. Young, and she goes in on a whim, and then she suddenly realizes that she has no antiques experience, she has no shop experience, and she really thinks that she's wasting their time. And in him chatting to her, she then realizes that this is the interview. There's not going to be a formal interview, it's just a chat. So he then says, okay, choose something from within the shop and tell me about it. So that's where we're going to start. Immediately, Hope's thoughts flew to the book room, where hundreds of stories were patiently waiting to be told. But she knew it would be cheating to choose one of those. Mr. Young wanted something that came from her own imagination. The trouble was, now that she needed it, her mind had gone completely blank. Mr. Young waited. It felt to Hope as though the whole shop was waiting, and the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock seemed impossibly loud in the silence, although she worried her thudding heart might give it some competition. Taking a deep breath, Hope forced herself to remember the items around the shop that had caught her eye. The Wedgwood tea set had been first. She could imagine that being used to serve afternoon tea in the parlour of a well-to-do 1930s house. Hope frowned. No, not a wealthy family, perhaps one that didn't have much money, but saved what they could and used the tea set on special occasions. And then there was the gramophone. She could almost hear it playing at a wartime tea dance, with that distinctive faint crackle as the needle travelled along the groove. But although she could picture both items being used, neither gave her anything more, a story she could tell. She felt a hot rush of failure burn her cheeks and was about to shake her head when her gaze fell on the clock again. Rob had once told her that, as a child, he'd believed his grandmother's clock hid a secret door leading to another world. Like the wardrobe that goes to Narnia, he'd said, with a self-deprecating headshake. I must have been reading the books. Did you ever find it? Hope had asked, and he'd smiled. Would you believe it if I said yes? That had been the moment she'd known that she loved him, really loved him, and his refusal to elaborate because he'd sworn an oath never to reveal the secret only delighted her more. And now, listening to the tick of the clock in this quirky magical shop, she could half believe that all grandfather clocks hid doors to other worlds. Here was a story she could tell, although she doubted she'd do it justice. Taking a moment to calm her racing heart, she gathered her thoughts. I'd like to tell you about the clock, she began, clearing her throat. It was made centuries ago for a duke and duchess and stood in the hallway of their grand house for many years, although they never really noticed it until it was gone. Even then, it was the absence of the tick they noticed, which was a great shame because the clock had a secret that might have changed their lives. Hope paused and risked a glance at Mr. Young, but he gave no indication whether this was what he'd been expecting. Instead, he tipped his head to indicate she should continue. The clock was given to a boarding school, where it stood for many years, watching children hurry past on their way to and from classes. Until one day, a child didn't hurry past. This child stopped and studied the clock. That evening at midnight, he crept downstairs when everyone else was asleep and lifted the hook at the side of the door. Now, when Hope looked at Mr. Young, she thought she detected a spark of interest in his expression. Inside the clock, the child found another doorway, one that led him to a world of adventure and enchantment. She hesitated and swallowed the lump that had suddenly appeared in her throat. And when he ran out of time in this life, far sooner than anyone expected, he breathed his last breath without sadness or complaint, knowing he'd lived 1,000 lives in the world through the clock. The words seemed to hang in the air for an age as Mr. Young regarded Hope steadily. Wonderful, he said at last, with the gentlest of smiles. Just wonderful. When can you start?
Wonderful, thank you. That was great. There were some really nice comments in the chat, just going like they really felt transported there, you know, and you and all the authors tonight have been absolutely amazing readers. So thank you so much for that. It's brilliant. We have time for one question.
Did I go on too long? I did, didn't I?
No.
I will have, no surprise to anyone, I will have pink, please.
Pink. Pink one for you. Okay, right. Aidan Turner or Idris Elba?
Oh, well, I mean, no offense.
It's hard hitting.
It really is. And no offense to Idris Elba. I was at a festival a couple of years back and he was DJing and it was so warm that there was steam literally coming off him. It was a steaming Idris Elba. So this isn't actually a tough choice, but anyone who knows me knows the answer to this already. Definitely Aidan Turner. He's my future husband, so I have to choose him.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Holly. It's amazing to have you here and hopefully we can talk to you more later.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you. Nathan.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so I can't quite believe how many authors we've already chatted to so far. Next up, we are really, really pleased to welcome Simon Booker. Hi, Simon, are you around?
Yes, I'm here. How nice to be here.
It's great to see you here. So Simon's rom-com, Three's a Crowd, is an incredible read, tender, engrossing, and extremely funny. That's according to author Lisa Cutts. It's out next month. Simon usually writes about criminals rather than courtship. He already has a successful career as a writer of crime fiction, both in print and on TV. So Simon, could you tell us a little bit about Three's a Crowd?
Well, as you say, Three's a Crowd, a rom-com. And it asks the question, what if an estranged father and son fell in love with the same woman? And that is the kind of, that's the kernel of the idea. And at the heart of it, the woman is Harriet Brown. She's a 35-year-old out of work actress, struggling to make ends meet and working as a barista in a cafe at the moment. And one of her customers is Tom, 25-year-old Tom, who's a rather cute looking guy who's desperate to make a living writing musicals. He wants to write a hit West End musical, but he's making ends meet, hacking out copy for Double Glazing Monthly, which is not his favourite job at all, but he just, he's paying the way. And at the same time, she's also being wooed by a guy called Richard, who is a silver fox. He's 50 years old. He's a DJ on Silk FM in London. And unbeknown to Harriet, Tom and Richard are related. They are father and son. They have different surnames, so nobody knows what's going on. And only when they find out, only when everybody finds out what's gone on, does the merde hit the fan, if you like, and things kind of start to take off. But the question is, which of those two blokes will Harriet end up with, or will she go back to the cockweasel swine who broke her heart after a 2-year romance when he revealed that he was already married with 2 women, already married with 2 children. So that is Three's a Crowd.
It's a high concept rom-com. And have you got a little extract for us, Simon?
I have. So the book is written in alternating chapters, Tom, Richard and Harriet, Tom, Dick and Harriet. And this is an extract from one of Harriet's chapters where she's bemoaning the life of the out-of-work actor. Thank God people seem to like my voice. A radio ad here, an audio book there means I can still call myself a professional actor, but only just. And lately, even voiceover work seems to have dried up, which explains why I'm pulling double shifts at the New Dalston Cafe. It's also why I entered the competition to become the voice of London. You know those tannoy announcements on the tube, mind the gap between the train and the platform edge? Or that disembodied voice on the bus, 73 to Stoke Newington? Well, that could be me. Assuming my voice hits the sweet spot with whoever dreamed up the competition on behalf of Silk FM and Transport for London. First prize, £5,000 and the chance to be the voice of London. If I win, not going to happen, I never win anything, maybe I'll finally pluck up courage to use the £5,000 to try my luck in Hollywood. Meanwhile, Mum and Dad are on their once-in-a-lifetime cruise. 3 months with no escape from each other. I bet they're fighting like rats in a sack. But actually, it's their bickering I miss most. The way the house comes alive when we're all at home. Me watching Strictly, Dad watching some DIY, Mum baking a cake. After they left, I managed 2 nights on my own, then moved in with Nan in Walthamstow. She always makes me laugh. Last night, after her bedtime Baileys, she listened to me wanging on about my ex, took out her teeth, then said, the best way to get over a bloke is to get under a bloke. I like her style.
Thanks, Simon. And some people might think that writing crime fiction and writing a rom-com are kind of polar opposites. But in terms of the actual craft, how different are they?
Well, I've always mixed and matched in genres. I mean, most of my career as a writer has been writing for television and film, and I've written, thrillers and for ITV and police procedurals for BBC and romantic comedies with Rob Lowe and Anna Friel for American television. So I've always kind of written in all kinds of different genres, and each has their own discipline, their own, set of not rules, but I mean their own kind of principles that is kind of wise to follow, if you like. So, but I like kind of mixing and matching, mixing things up.
And given that you've had so much kind of success as an author of crime fiction recently, was there any kind of pushback from the publisher in terms of switching lanes kind of thing, or were they keen to hear you write a rom-com?
No, I mean the rom-com seems to have gone down very well, I'm happy to say. It's published in August, so we'll see. We'll see if the publishers in Simon & Schuster's faith is rewarded. Let's hope it is.
I'm sure it will be. Okay, I'm delving into the coffee jar. Let's see what comes out. Okay, apart from your book, what beach reads would you recommend to our viewers?
Oh, what beach reads? Gosh, that's a good question. Well, I just bought Jonathan Coe's new book called Mr. Wilder and Me, about a kind of imagining of life with Billy Wilder, the legendary film director. So I can't recommend it yet because I haven't actually really started it, but I'm looking forward to it. It's certainly going to be, I'm living at the beach at the moment in Deal in Kent. So as soon as the weather kind of perks up a bit, I shall certainly be out there on the beach myself with Mr. Wilder and Me from Jonathan Coe.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. People are going to have so much on their to read list at the end of tonight. Thanks so much, Simon. Back to you, Lara.
Okay, right. Our next author is the wonderful Fanny Blake. Fanny, hello.
Hi.
Hi. So Fanny is a long established and well-loved name. She's been an editor, ghostwriter, author, literary judge. She's done it all. And yeah, she's here this evening to talk about her book, The Long Way Home. So over to you.
Thank you. Well, this is The Long Way Home. And it tells the story of Isla, who's a 60-something-year-old grandmother, who's left a mysterious old picture in her mother's will, while her two sisters get the rest of the estate. So she's understandably upset and shocked, and she decides to set off on a road trip to find out why this has happened. But at the very last minute, she's forced to take her 14-year-old granddaughter with her, who is excluded from school, difficult, sullen, and generally teenagery. So the two of them set off and discover some life-changing family truths at the same time as learning to love each other. And this is interspersed by a story set in Paris in the 1950s, which is where the story of 4 generations of women and the secrets that are passed down through them, where that begins. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And yeah, we'd love to hear a reading if that's okay.
Okay, well, I'm plunging into the middle because I thought I'd give you a taste of Isla and Charlie's relationship. When Charlie eventually surfaced the following morning, she was as disengaged as she had ever been. Phone held in the front of her mouth, she was involved in an animated conversation. She lounged against the kitchen units, once or twice catching Isla's eye, then looking away. That last coupling, I didn't think she'd drop him. Yeah, no, he's fit, but Isla stopped listening. Instead, she shunted cereal, toast, cold, and jam across the table, hoping that Charlie would remember their mealtime deal of no phones. Eventually, the call ended, and Charlie came and sat down with all the energy of someone who had just completed a marathon. So, Isla tried to be breezy, but ended up sounding like a school teacher. Haddon Hall, ready? Charlie pulled the cereal towards her, then reached for her phone. Several narrow silver bangles and a fabric wristband that Isla hadn't noticed before slid down her arm. Rules, she reminded her. She bit back a comment on Charlie's denim shorts, so short that the pockets hung down her thighs from the inside and her bum could almost be seen from behind. Fuck's sake. Charlie spoke under her breath, but there was such irritability that Isla didn't need to hear the words to understand the sentiment. Nonetheless, the phone disappeared into her pocket. Tea? Isla said, as if there was nothing wrong. Please. Charlie began to spread honey on a piece of toast. They didn't speak for a few minutes while Charlie ate that, then helped herself to another. Then she broke the silence. Gran, have you really got a boyfriend? Well, yes. Charlie's curiosity made her feel uncomfortable. Why isn't he here with you then? She bit into the last piece of toast with a crunch. He's not that interested in me and my issues with Mum. And anyway, he's got his own stuff to do. He's coming up this weekend, though. She felt herself blushing. Is he? When? Will I meet him? He's arriving at Preston when I put you on the train home. Oh. A ping made her take out her phone and flick at its side before putting it away again. What's he like? Tall, kind, funny sometimes. But Charlie had already lost interest. That's it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Lots of people in the chat going like it's on their TBR, they're taking it on holiday with them next week, they can't wait to read it. So that's awesome.
Well, I hope they enjoy it.
I'm sure they will, I'm sure. And which colour would you like?
Purple.
Purple, okay. It's a purple one. Which literary character would be your BFF? It can be one of your characters.
Oh my God, that's so difficult.
Sorry. Let's go for another colour.
I can't think of a single book. Never mind a character. I'm just completely blanked. Sorry.
Aidan Turner or Idris Elba?
Oh, of course, Aidan Turner.
This is a theme, you know. I think I would choose the same. Absolutely.
I'm going to fight Holly.
That'll be
Literally just
later.
come to say he's mine. Hands off.
No, sorry.
Time for one more colour.
Yellow.
Yellow. Okay, these aren't all themed this way. It just happened. Gin or prosecco?
Oh, that's impossible too.
I'm so sorry, Fanny.
Gin.
Nice answer. Awesome. Fantastic. Fanny, you've been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
That was our 9th author. So over to Nathan for our 10th.
Thanks. Yeah, I can't quite believe we've actually made it to author number 10. Last but not least, we've got Jackie Fraser with us. Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
Waiting patiently, but enjoying some great readings as well. So Jackie's debut novel.
It's been great.
It has, hasn't it? Great evening. So Jackie's debut novel, The Bookshop of Second Chances, great title, is out now as an ebook, and it will be published in paperback later this year. It's been called a real winner with so much heart and a wonderfully relatable heroine. Can you tell us a little bit about The Bookshop of Second Chances, Jackie?
Okay, so this is the American edition, which because there's not a paperback of the UK one yet, so I'm going to read from this one. But so it's about a woman in her mid-40s, Thea Mottram, who has had a bad month. She's found out that her husband has been having an affair with one of their friends, and she lost her job as well the same month. But because it's a book and because she's very fortunate, she also finds out that her great uncle has died and left her his house and his collection of books, modern and antiquarian, in the lowlands of Scotland. So in order to distract herself from the misery of taking her belongings from her marital home and moving into a really horrible studio flat, she has to go up to Scotland to clear Uncle Andrew's house of stuff. So she goes up with her best friend Xanthi, and they go to Baldockery, which is an invented tiny town just near Newton Stewart. She meets various people who live in the town, including minor aristocracy, Charles Maltravers, and his brother Edward, a curmudgeonly bookshop owner. She decides she's going to sell the books, so that's how she gets to know Edward, and then she decides to stay up in Baldockery rather than going home for the summer at least. You know, shenanigans, as they say, ensue as she gets a job in the bookshop, and yeah, that's pretty much it really.
Fantastic. And do you have a little extract for us?
I do. I'm going to have to put the light on, and also I just reached that point in my life where I'm wearing my contact lenses, but I probably need reading glasses. So you'll have to excuse me from holding my book at a funny angle. Okay. So this is kind of, this is early on in the book. This is essentially when she first meets Edward. She's been warned that he's, you know, a grumpy arse, basically. She goes into the bookshop to talk to him about selling her books. Thick dark curtains hang down, blocking the light from the windows. Behind the counter, up a step, there's an unravelling armchair and a little desk with a laptop. Sitting in the armchair, hunched and crow-like, is a dark-haired man. It's shadowy, and he has a green shaded desk lamp to light his little corner. He's looking at something on the screen and is surrounded by more books piled around him, lots of them with pieces of paper sticking out, marking his place, or maybe a particularly fascinating part. I stand by the counter for a minute or so, but he doesn't look around or acknowledge me at all. I'm not exactly surprised. It's not like I haven't been warned. I'm tempted to ring the bell, but he seems, that seems even ruder than being ignored. Hello, I say eventually. He looks up. He doesn't actually sigh, but he may as well have done. Yes, he says. I was wondering if you could help me, I say, refusing to be discouraged. I doubt it. For some reason, this amuses me. You probably can. It's a book-related question. This time he does sigh. Whatever makes you think I know anything about books? It's just a hunch. Are you Edward? I can see him wondering whether to deny it. I've inherited some books, I continue, and I probably need to sell some of them, or all of them. He stands up, or rather unfolds, and comes to lean on the marble countertop. He has good bones, a strong jaw, and eyebrows clearly made for scowling. He scowls. I know he's older than the other one, the Lord, Charles. He might be 5 years older than me, maybe approaching 50. There's not much grey in his hair, which is wildly curly like his brother's, but rather longer and more unkempt. He's wearing a dark blue sweater with a small hole, moths, in one shoulder, a dark patterned shirt underneath, vaguely floral. He has dark eyes, a wide mouth, and the straight teeth of the well-bred. And he's tall, much taller than I am. He might even be 6'4", even allowing for the fact that he's standing on a raised platform. He looks down on me and I look up. It's quite intimidating. What kind of books? I'm not interested in your granny's Mills and Boon. He pauses, thinking, unless you have any from the early 60s or before. I don't think either of my grannies ever read any Mills and Boon, I say. They were Jane Eyre and Rebecca all the way. Anyway, no, I think you've seen them, the books, I mean, if you are Edward. I want to know how much my Scots are worth and whether I should sell them up here or at home. You think I've seen them? Yes, apparently. First editions? Uncle Andrew's books. He frowns at me. Uncle, well, but you can't be Andrew Hamilton's niece, surely. Why can't I? Oh, but I'm not. I'm his great niece. This is apparently more acceptable. He nods. Charlotte, he says, or Emily, or something. Thea Mottram, I say, slightly irritated. Hello. Yeah, hi. He looks at me for a moment and then walks to the edge of the counter and down the step, coming over into the room towards me. I step back involuntarily, which he seems to find amusing. He grins at me and sticks out his hand. Hello, I'm Edward Maltravers. We shake. I like shaking hands, much prefer it to kissing people. His hand is very large. I'm not a remotely small person. I'm 5'11", more with my shoes on, and I rarely feel short, but he really is tall, a good 4 or 5 inches more than me. The Scots, he says, all of them? I nod. There we are.
Thanks so much, Jackie. And I noticed that on top of being a writer, you're also an editor. So what impact did that have on writing your novel? Did it make it easier or was it harder because you're a bit of a perfectionist?
Well, I don't know. I mostly edit, for a long time, I edited non-fiction. So although I'm quite good at picking up, typos and stuff, it's kind of a different thing. I think the main bonus was that I absolutely didn't expect anything to happen quickly, because I do understand that publishing is a very, very slow business. So that was quite good. Also, yeah, I'm quite strict about my own stuff, and I was really pleased when my editor at Simon & Schuster told me that my manuscript was very clean.
Excellent. Right, we've got just about a few seconds left, so I'm going to delve into the jar before we head over to the audience questions. Let's have a look. I hope it's a good one. Is there a genre of story that you haven't explored already that you'd be interested in writing?
Probably not. I mean, I write fantasy as well. I like crime novels, but I definitely couldn't write one and wouldn't be interested in writing one, I don't think. I've been writing for a long time and I write all kinds of stuff. So I think I've probably explored everything that I want to.
Great. Well, thank you ever so much, Jackie. Lara, I'm going to pass back to you. I can't quite believe we made it without overrunning even more than we did.
I know, it's been Brilliant. And to the authors, you know, we're absolutely overjoyed that you've joined us. We can't believe we've got through all 10. We're really sorry if we've had to rush you. We have like literally about 8 minutes for questions. If we run over a little bit, we're really, really sorry. Big thank you to everyone who's been leaving some fantastic questions in the question box the whole way through. We'll try and do one for each author, and then every question that's answered today, fingers crossed, we can send you a little prize. So over to my lovely colleague Emma, who will just sort of pinpoint a few questions we can do this evening. Emma, over to you.
Okay. Try and ask each author a question, but it's a bit difficult to go through all of them. So, with me. How do you decide where to set your books? The settings are always so lovely and welcoming, and that's from Faye. That's Heidi.
Who's that to?
Heidi.
Heidi.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Emma? I didn't quite hear.
Sorry. How do you decide where to set your books? The settings are always so lovely and welcoming.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, we started off in Wimbridge, which was country based, and then we moved to Nightingale Square, which was city, and then we went to Weymouth, which was seaside. And kind of I've got a bit of a pattern going now. So I kind of imagine a Christmas story set somewhere and a summer story set somewhere else. So I've got kind of the three that I can work between now. That doesn't mean to say that I won't go to the same place in the summer and at Christmas as well. But yeah, you just kind of get a sense of a feel for where the next story is going to be. And I've got stories lined up, quite a few ahead now. I've got characters kind of from books that I've just written still sort of tapping on the shoulder, so that kind of leads me to make a decision as to where the next one's going to be. As much as anything, it's very character driven as well as very setting driven, but the settings are so important. I think they're as important as the characters, really. So I'm pleased that people enjoy them.
Okay, and this one was to Penny from Bernadetta Smith. What does home mean to you?
I'm slightly biased in that I don't think you can have a proper home without animals in it. And so, I mean, I'm excluding my children from this, but yeah, I mean, to me, home, you come home, you get greeted by the dog. And actually, when we did have an awful stage without a dog, it really just the whole vibe of the house changed. So I need a comfy sofa and I need a dog on my lap. And to be honest, then I can be home anywhere.
Okay, and this one's from Lindsay to Fanny. What was your first book and how did you start?
My first book was a book called What Women Want, and I wanted to write about friendship between older women and the issues that face older women. And I think it's about, I can't really remember, I think it's about three or four women who, God. Well, anyway, it's about 3 or 4 women, and that's all I can say.
I just want to add, while Emma's looking for the next question, if we don't get around to your question this evening, we're really sorry. There have been so many amazing ones, and if you do win something, we will email you like in the next, probably by tomorrow or Saturday. So yeah, we're sorry. There's just been so many, it's been like overwhelming, but thank you guys so much.
Hey, this is from Linda Hill to Anstey. Has a new home affected your writing?
I haven't started yet. We've only been here 3 weeks, so but I would imagine there'll be an awful lot more wildlife in my writing than there was before. We're weirdly, Jackie just said that her town is a a kind of cover up for Newton Stewart, which is where I went today for my COVID test. So, because it's just down the road, literally.
Okay, whoever hasn't, I've got, it's not to a particular author, but if someone who hasn't answered would want to answer it, then it's fine. Okay, actually, I found one for Sharon. So, which is the hardest to write, children's books or young adults or adults books?
Oh, I saw this question. It's a really good question. They're all equally difficult. It was funny. I'm currently just getting to the end of the first draft of my next children's book, and then I have to go back to the second draft of my next adult book. And I really thought after finishing my adult book, I'd find it easier to write the children's book. And it hasn't been. Honestly, their children's books there might be more, I don't know, flightier things involved, but the writing process is pretty much the same. Every book you have a hiccup somewhere, and every book you have to keep going. So so yeah, they're equally a challenge, but wonderful to have.
I was going to say that because I wrote for children as well, I saved my best, no offense to anyone here, but I saved my best writing for children. I really have to think hard about what I write for children, whereas when I'm writing for adults, do you know what? I just know that you're all going to understand and you're all going to get it. So it just kind of flows out of me much more easily. And I can write for adults quickly, but writing for children, oh, that's hard for me. I really have to focus, and that's my very best writing. So I'm a little bit different to Sharon. I'd much rather write for adults because it's so much easier.
Okay, and the next question's for Simon. How do you feel writing a genre mainly dominated by women? Oh, I think you muted, Simon.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you for the question from Susan. There. How do I feel writing in a genre dominated by women? Well, very comfortable is the short answer. I'm very happy doing that. Apparently, blokes, as a rule, don't read books written by women. And all I can say is blokes are missing out on an awful lot of really fantastic books. And I've always enjoyed writing. I mean, in television, I've written for a lot of fantastic women actors like Diana Rigg and Anna Friel and all kinds of really great women characters. And I enjoy writing women characters. My crime series, the Morgan Vine books, my heroine is a woman. And I'm just generally comfortable in that genre. So if that makes me unusual, then so be it. And as I say, blokes who are not reading books by and about women are missing out on a lot.
Okay, so this one's from Karen to Eva. Do you think Black and BME authors are finally getting more of a share in the market?
Yeah, I do. I hope it is something that continues and it's not just a phase. That's sort of my concern, really. But yes, I do think that people are so much more aware and conscious of the need for diverse stories and from underrepresented backgrounds. So yeah, I really think that it changes afoot and everyone's aware, and yeah, I think it's a good, yeah.
So it's just difficult finding the last few questions for the right authors. Okay, if you've not answered the question and you want to answer this one, it's from Karen. Are there any books you have failed to finish reading despite them being famously loved? Mine was Grapes of Wrath. That's okay, no takers, that's fine.
I don't mind hopping in a second just to say,
okay.
I think as an ex-blogger, rather than talking about anything we maybe didn't love, it's so exciting to talk about all the millions of books we do love, that actually those are the ones share and to shout about as readers, because there are so many thousands of them, rather than picking on maybe the one or two that you don't fall in love with.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
Hello, everyone. I've got behind my desk, you can't see my desk, but it's behind me here somewhere. See there? See those boxes? I've got 17 boxes stuffed full to the gills of treats. Why don't the remaining questions who aren't able to be answered this evening pick out, so it's 17 in total, Emma, send me the addresses.
Yep.
And I'll send 17 boxes out. How does that sound to everyone?
Thank you.
Because I appreciate you are under immense pressure here, Emma, and no one wants that on a Thursday night.
Extra, thank you so much. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you to our wonderful, wonderful authors and everybody else for tuning in this evening. It's been an hour and a half of just like pure awesomeness. So yes, and massive thank you to SJ for, you know, letting us work with her again and put this evening together.
I love working with you guys.
It's always wonderful. So yes, keep watching the Hillingdon Library's author event page for all our author events. Maybe one day we could have this event, but in person in a library. That would just be absolutely fantastic. And see your gorgeous faces in real life. Love that. Maybe in the Great Barn or something. That would be wonderful. I know a few of you have been already. Yes. Okay, good. Everyone's saying yes. Fantastic. All right. Well, have a lovely rest of your evening. Say thank you so much. If you want to buy these guys' books, please look for them. Obviously, I think bookshop.org is a really good place to buy them, supports local indies. Of course, you know, for the ebooks, look out for them. Holly, where's the best place to get ebooks?
Well, you can get them on Kobo.
I've just put the Simon & Schuster link into the chat box.
Fab. Thank you, SJ.
Books in all formats by all authors are on there, including links to buy from your preferred retailer of choice, whether that's in ebook, physical book, audio book, or any other method. Enjoy.
Thank you, SJ. Save me from having to answer.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.